back to my channel. I hope that you're doing well. Welcome to another video and welcome back to another unhaul. Today we'll be discussing all the books that I am taking out of my home, no longer to be in my library. Most of these I have not read. There are only a handful of books that I have read. I was just doing a little bit of purge on some of the books that I found that I am no longer interested in or just have no desire anymore to read it, and that might change in the future, but if I ever change my mind, I can always pick up the books on ebook or audiobook from my library and read them that way instead of having them taking up space on my shelves. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. So we're first going to start off with the 3 books that I'm unhauling that I have actually read. The first one being Late to the Party by Callie Quinlan. This was a book that I read for my rainbow reading vlog last year, I believe, and I really enjoyed it. I gave it, I believe, a 4 out of 5 stars. I thought it was a really great book that had a ton of different representation. It had great representation for bisexuality, as well as lesbian, gay, rep. All of it was fantastic, and I really enjoyed the story as a whole. I just don't see myself picking it back up and rereading it. I am really outgrowing my era of YA contemporaries, and so this is just not one I see myself rereading, so I don't need to keep it on my shelves. Plus, I feel like there is somebody out there that could really benefit from reading this one, and I could give them that opportunity. Along the same lines, I have the Falling in Love montage by Sierra Smith, and this is one that I read for that queer reading vlog last year as well, and again, I really enjoyed it. I thought it had some great representation. This is a female-female romance that I really enjoyed. Again, I just don't see myself rereading it and don't need to keep it on my shelf. And the last one that I have read that I'm getting rid of actually pains me a little because I never thought that I would get rid of one of her books, but it's gonna happen, and that is Layla by Colleen Hoover. I read this and I just was not impressed, especially after already having read Verity and really enjoying her more suspense novel. I was really expecting to love this, but this one just fell short for me. I didn't love the characters really. I didn't really love how the story played out, and even though it was interesting to read, I couldn't get behind some of the decisions that were made by the male main character, and it just felt weird. I read it, I gave it 3 stars, but I don't see myself ever rereading it, so there's no need to keep it. Okay, now we're going to move on to books that I have not read, and I actually have these in genre order, so the first 2 I'm going to talk about are classics. Honestly, I should just get rid of all of the classics that I have on my shelves, but there are a few that I'm holding on to, but most of these, I'm just never going to reread them or read them for the first time, so it doesn't really matter, right? The first one that I was hoping to reread at some point was Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. I did read this one in high school, and I enjoyed my reading experience in high school, but it was a high school read. It wasn't really something that was high priority for me at the time, and so I was hoping to get back around to it, but I am never, ever drawn to classics. Like, literally never, and I would much rather spend my time reading things that I'm actually going to enjoy. Then I have a Owl Crate edition? Yes, an Owl Crate edition of Pride and Prejudice that came in a box as an additional book, but I have already owned this book, tried it, and DNF'd it and unhauled it, so there's no reason for me to keep another copy that I received. It's very pretty. I think that they did a good job with this particular edition, but there's no reason for me to keep it, and I'm sure somebody else will absolutely love this. And the last one that I have is The Arabian Nights. This is an anonymous book, but it has a few edits by Andrew Lang, and another one that I just don't see myself ever reading. It was a good idea at the time when I picked it up. I did pick this one up used at my bookstore that I was working at the time, but I'm just never going to read this, so no need to keep it. And this is kind of a running theme throughout these books. Most of these I picked up when I was working at the bookstore and just was picking up books willy-nilly without really thinking about whether or not I was actually going to read them or enjoy them. So I feel like bringing books into my home has definitely changed since working at a used bookstore, but these are definitely ones that I just no longer need to keep on my shelves and keep kidding myself into thinking, oh yeah, you're gonna read that someday. So that was all the classics. Now we're moving into thrillers. The first one that I have here is The Secrets You Keep by Kate White. I'm just purging myself with thrillers. I very rarely read them, and when I do, I'm usually pretty unimpressed by them, and even if I like them, it's not something that I'll ever reread, so I don't see myself purchasing them in the future and or picking them up. I'm just never drawn to them. I much rather read a romance or a fantasy than a thriller, so I'm just purging my shelves of the ones that genuinely do not interest me anymore, or I don't know anything about them. Next up is My Sister the Serial Killer. This is one that I did have some interest in, but I just don't care. It's short. It would be easy for me to read, but I can't get behind it, so I'm not gonna read it. Then we have The Life Between Us by Greer Hendricks and Sarah Pekkanen. The reason that I picked this one up originally was because I had heard really good things about this author duo, and I was like, yeah, I definitely need to read one of their books. But I don't care. I don't care. Honestly, I found that I've been more successful with YA thrillers and mysteries than I have with adult thrillers and mysteries, so I feel like if I'm going to pick up a mystery, it's going to be YA, which is funny because I just said I'm growing out of my YA contemporary, era, but those ones tend to work for me more than adult ones do. And finally, for thrillers, we have The Last Mrs. Parrish by Liv Constantine, another one that I am happy that I'm getting rid of. I'm not mad about it. I'm not upset. It is what it is. That is it for thrillers. Let's move on to contemporaries and romances that I'm getting rid of, and the 2 manga that I have. So the 2 manga that I'm getting rid of are ones that I picked up used from the bookstore, and I just know, which way does this go? I just know that I'm never going to get around to these ones. I have Ghost Diaries and Crimson Shell. One of these I'll be giving to Mike because he was interested in reading them, but if I'm going to pick up manga, I have to really, really want to read it, not just because it's easy and short. I have to be invested, and I'm just not invested in either one of these. Then we have some Morgan Matson. This is Since You've Been Gone. This is one that I heard really good things about, but again, growing out of my YA era, and I don't see the reason to keep this one. I have heard good things, and I have not yet read a Morgan Matson book, but there's just so many other books I would rather prioritize than this one, so I'm clearing up some space. Same thing goes for Jessica Brody. Geography What Was Lost. I have read one of Jessica Brody's other books, The Chaos of Standing Still, and I loved that book. Still need to reread it at some point, but again, I just don't see myself gravitating towards this one anytime soon, so there's no reason to keep it. Up next, we have Paradise by Toni Morrison. This is one of those books that I picked up because I was like, I need to read a Toni Morrison. She's a Black author. She's very well known. She's popular. I need to read her. No, I don't. I love reading by Black authors, but there's no reason for me to force myself to read something I have no interest in just because it is a Black author. There are plenty of other Black authors out there that I could be supporting. I just don't need to read this one. Up next, we have 2 Christina Lauren books. We have Twice in a Blue Moon and My Favorite Half Night Stand. I have heard not so good things about either one of these books, and honestly, the only other Christina Lauren book that I have read and have had like a big pull to read was The Unhoneymooners, and I read that one and I did enjoy it, but ever since then I have not been compelled to pick up any more of their books, so I don't need to keep these ones. Then we have The Bookish Life of Nina Hill. I wanted to read this one because it has bookish in the title. It felt very apt as a reader myself, but I just don't see myself ever picking it up. I don't really tend to gear towards contemporary, especially adult contemporary, all that often, so no need to kid myself. Then we have a book I never should have purchased, and that is Permanent Record by Mary H.K. Choi. And the reason I say that I never should have purchased this is because I picked this up on ebook a long time ago, I think in 2020, and I had read a little bit of it, and I just wasn't that interested in it, so I put it down, and I didn't intend to pick it back up again. And then I was at the dollar store, and I saw this for $1.25, and I was like, oh, I need it! No, I didn't. I still have no interest in picking this up, and I only picked it up because it was super cheap, so definitely a mistake on my part, but it's time to get rid of it. This is another book that I had picked up with every intention of going back to it, knowing that I probably would never pick it back up again, and that is Juliet Takes a Breath by Gabby Rivera. This is one of those books that I picked up for a Reading the Rainbow Challenge at one point for Pride Month, and I picked up the first couple pages, and I just wasn't driving with the writing style and the way it was written, and I just didn't have any interest in picking it back up, but I kept it for so long because I always feel bad getting rid of diverse books because I want to support as many diverse authors as I can, but I can definitely give this to somebody else who can support that author by reading their books and giving it a review rather than it sitting on my shelf and never getting read. And the last book in the romance section is Foreplay by Maya Banks and Shayla Black. This is a book that I've had on my These Books Will Self-Destruct in 12 Months video, and I know that I'm never going to get to it. I picked it up on a whim because it is 4 short stories or novellas all about erotic relationships, but even though it sounds good, I know that I won't pick it up, so there's no reason for me to let it keep collecting dust on my shelves, and I knew that if I didn't read it within a year, I was never going to read it, which is why I put it on that video, but I'm not going to pick it up. And the last and final stack that we have here are sci-fis and fantasies. There's only a few sci-fis in here, but they're mixed in with the fantasies, so let's go ahead and get into it. The first one I have is a middle grade, The Castle in the Mist by Amy Efron. I picked this one up on a whim when it was going to get donated at the bookstore, and even though I have a lot of middle grades that I am very interested in reading, this just doesn't happen to be one of them. I picked it up because I thought the cover was cute, not because I actually read the synopsis, and it was free, so I took it. But I have a lot of other middle grades on my shelves that I'm more interested in, and I don't need to keep this one. Then we have an entire series that I just know I'm never going to read, and that is The Shattered World, or This Broken Star, or whatever the fuck the series is called, by Amy Kaufman and Megan Spooner. Again, not a series that I'm ever going to pick up. Ever since I've had it, which I've had these for probably a good year and a half, I have never been compelled to pick them up. I don't read a lot of sci-fi, and I just don't need to keep them. Then we have How Long Till Black Future Month by N.K. Jemisin. This was given to me as a gift, which is really hard for me to part with because I'm so grateful that somebody spent their money on me and sent it to me for my birthday, but I just don't see myself ever getting to this one. I don't even know why I put it on my wish list because I'm not a huge short story collection fan. And the books that I own by N.K. Jemisin I still need to read, so this is not one that I need to prioritize, so I'm gonna get rid of it. Then we have another extra book box book. I believe this came in a Fairy Loot. It was an additional book, not the actual special edition, but this is The Coldest Touch by Isabel Sterling, and this is just not one that I can see myself reading. I do love a good paranormal romance, but I don't know, the actual synopsis of this story just doesn't intrigue me as much as I thought it would, so I'm gonna get rid of this. Alright, then we have 2 books in the Twisted Tale series. Every time I read these, I never end up loving them enough to keep them, so I feel like I don't need to read them at all. The first one being A Whole New World by Liz Braswell, and then this one also by Liz Braswell, Once Upon a Dream. This one is the Sleeping Beauty retelling, and this one is the Aladdin retelling. I don't really need to read them, so I'm gonna give them up. Then we have 2 more books in the series, and that is Matched and Crossed by Ali Condi. I picked these ones up at the bookstore when I was working there because they were gonna get donated, they were used, and I got them for free. Again, I'm not gonna read it. If I were to pick up a YA fantasy, it would be something much more modern than this, so no need to keep it. Speaking of throwback fantasies, we have A Great and Terrible Beauty by Libba Bray. I held on to this one for so long because I have yet to read any Libba Bray, and if I ended up loving her books, then I would want to go back and read this one, but this is historical, and I just don't vibe with historical things, so I feel like even if I kept it on my shelf and loved Libba Bray's writing, I would still never get around to it. And the last and final book that I'm getting rid of is The Invention of Hugo Cabret by Brian Selznick. This is a middle grade book that's told half in illustrations and then half in words. I had always had an intention of getting to this one, but I've had it for probably 2 years and I still haven't read it. So I don't think that I really need it, and I never think about it, so that tells you something. So I'm gonna get rid of this one. I'm sure that some kid that finds this, or adult or young adult reader that finds this, will absolutely love it. Alright, that is all of the books that I'm unhauling this time around. Definitely a good chunk of books. A lot of them that I haven't read, but you know what, I'm okay with that. All the books that I perused through, I looked at and thought, or at least the ones that are right on my shelves, the ones that I looked at and thought, am I going to reread this? And the answer was yes at some point, so those are the ones I kept. And the ones that I hadn't gotten to, I don't need them. And if I want to read them, I'll pick them up on ebook or audiobook and hopefully enjoy them in that capacity. But I would love to hear your thoughts. I personally love watching and filming unhauls. It always feels so satisfying to let go of books on your shelves that you know you're never going to get to. So I would love to hear your thoughts on unhauling. Let me know if you've read any of these books and what you thought of them. I would love to hear your thoughts on that as well. But that is the end of this video. I really hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, please make sure to give it a big old thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe before you leave. And of course, leave any comments, questions, and suggestions in the comment section below. And I will see you in the next video. Bye.
Baby, turn it down like a sweet and ready. Boys, keep it nice and steady.